All right, episode 2, let's do it. Today we look at the first half of the story the rapper NF tells through his music about overcoming fear. My name is Christian and welcome to the Let's Talk Gratitude podcast. All right, so let's talk NF's story so far. So if you don't know who NF is, who is NF? NF's a rapper from Michigan. He came up through the Christian rap scene. He has 6 albums out right now. Now, technically, one of them, Clouds, is a mixtape, but it has 10 songs on it, and his most recent album, Hope, has 13 songs on it, so we're just going to call it an album and say he has 6 albums. So also, I think you should know that NF is one of my 2 favorite artists right now. I've been listening to him since 2015. So if throughout this podcast it sounds like I'm a cheerleader for him, well, now you know where my bias stands. But what made me connect with his music in the first place was the story he was telling through each of his songs. Now, it's not in every song, right? He has plenty of songs that are just the rapidy rap songs that talk about how great he is at rapping, or he's just trash talking the rap game. But if you listen carefully, throughout each album, you start to pick up on these on story structures, these classical story structures that start being created in each album, right? You start seeing a setting being created, characters being revealed, conflict between these characters occurring through through several of the songs. Okay, now classic story structures and story elements isn't a new thing in music, right? NF didn't create that. 21 Pilots did it with in their Trench album with the Dima story and Blurry Face. But what I believe separates this artist and this song from those other artists is that this one is spanning across 6 albums so far. Okay, his most recent album, Hope, is just another turn in the story, and I'm looking forward to see where it goes next after Hope. So what we're gonna do is this. So obviously, in the video title, you see that this is a part 1. In the intro, I said we're gonna talk about the first half. So because I want to do this great story justice, because I believe it's earned it, what we're gonna do is break this story up into sort of a 3-act structure. Right? We're gonna look at the setup, conflict, and the resolution. That's how it's going to get broken up. And today we're just going to look at the setup and the conflict. And then Friday we'll finish with the resolution. Okay, so another point. We're not going to cover every song on every album. This would be a 15-hour podcast if we did that. So all we're going to do is look at the songs that most relate to this story. Alrighty? So, also, what I would love for us to do, because I think this is going to be helpful for us looking at this simply from a story and not from this is my favorite artist. So I am going to, for the next 30 minutes, forget that he's my favorite artist, and I want you to forget that he's a famous artist, okay? We're just going to try and look at this like this as if this were a book. We're breaking down breaking down the story of a book. Okay, so we're going to start with a setup. So like any classic story, you have to introduce your protagonist, your antagonist, you have to introduce the setting, you have to introduce the conflict. And so to do that, we're going to start with the self-titled NF EP. So this came out before all the albums. This had like 5 songs on it. And the first song we're going to look at, there's 2 songs on the EP we're going to look at. That's All I Have and Just Being Me. I think these 2 songs do the best job of introducing us to the protagonist of this story. And so NF in later albums just refers to this character as Nate. So we're gonna also call him Nate. Now NF's actual name is Nathan. So Nate works just fine. Alright, so the protagonist. Let's get to the protagonist. So looking at All I Have, let's look at the important lines in All I Have. So here it is, All I Have. I came in the game as a lyricist, and I'm gonna leave like that. Period. You sniff lines, I write lines. You've now entered in my mind, and you better get ready, because you might find I'm from a different place, and my kind, it's a little bit different than yours is. And then later in the song, he goes, "Yo, what do you think I write raps for? No reason? No. I take my pain and I put 'em in a song. Ever since them pills, they took my mom. I've been a different person. Don't try to predict my verses. What you're hearing now is me, whether I'm in front or behind that curtain. I stand behind these words. I'm a Christian, but I'm not perfect." Alright, so now let's go to Just Being Me. And here's the final. Here are the last final lines that I think introduce this NF protagonist. This is in the second verse of Just Being Me. Since I was a kid, I had a dream that I would make it. I spent thousands of hours writing music in the basement. Even though I'm broke, you know why I still chase it? Because once you got a taste of it, there's no replacement. Yo, I don't rap so millions of people will like me. I rap because there's millions of people just like me. If you think I'm out of my mind, I ain't gonna argue. I might be. But I'm not on a stage just for people to sightsee. So what do we see about this protagonist, Nate? All right, so we see 5 things. 1, he's a Christian. 2, he writes about his life, pains and all. 3, he lost his mom to pills. 4, he had a dream as a kid to be a rapper and worked very hard on it, right? He said he wrote for thousands of hours. And the last reason, he writes because there's people just like him that he wants to connect to. So now we got our first character, we got our protagonist. Now let's go to NF's first album and look at the song Mansions. Okay? And let's meet the setting and the protagonist. So the chorus of the first song goes. The chorus of the first song is going to tell us exactly where this is taking place. This is going to set up the whole scene for us, set up where this entire story happens. So this is Mansion. My mind is a home I'm trapped in, and it's lonely inside this mansion. Okay, so the whole story is going to take place inside basically his own mind, his mansion. Okay, which he describes later in the song that the mansion, the walls in the mansion are covered in lyrics. There are songs in the mirrors and the floors and in the chairs. This is the mansion where you get to see the rawest form of Nate. Okay, you get to see how he copes with his issues, and you see how he's going to talk about different problems in his life. And here he does an interesting thing in the song where he gives each sort of problem its own room, right? That this is its own corner of his mind where it exists in. He mentions 4 different problems that he deals with. First is physical abuse, regret, complacency, anger. And in each of these rooms, and this is the interesting part, right? Each of these rooms, Nate is incredibly comfortable with bringing us, his audience, into it. He doesn't sound distressed. He doesn't sound panicked or embarrassed that they're there. He talks very, very calmly, matter-of-factly about what each of these rooms means to him, how he struggled with them. But the last verse of the song, he brings us to another room. A room that he says he doesn't let anyone into. And he admits that he's emotionally scared to bring people into this room. And he tells us exactly why. So here's later, the last verse in Mansions. So I just leave my doors locked. You might get other doors to open up, but this door's not. Because I don't want you to have the opportunity to hurt me. And I'll be the only person I can blame when you desert me. And after he says that, he basically starts panicking. Okay? He says he's barricaded inside the mansion. He's lost in his own conscience. That he's trapped himself in the mansion. And he also says that he did this not because he thought it was going to solve any problems. Right? Shutting the world out wasn't... The point of shutting the world out wasn't so that it could solve problems. He did it because he thought it was safer. And the idea here is that sometimes we isolate ourselves from our friends and our families because doing that is much easier than actually dealing with the problem that's tearing us apart inside. And honestly, I greatly relate to that idea. I mean, I can say that because I've done that before, and it's incredibly unhealthy. But here is where we're going to meet the antagonist after that line, all right? I built it because I thought it would be safer in there, but it's not. I'm not the only thing living in here. Fear came to my house years ago. I let him in. Maybe that's the problem, because I've been dealing with this ever since. I thought that he would leave, but it's obvious he never did. He must have picked the room and got comfortable and settled in. Now I'm in a position, it's either sit here and let him win, or put him back outside where he came from, but I never can. Because in order to do that, I'd have to open the doors. Is that me or the fear talking? I don't know anymore. So who's our antagonist? It's the personification of fear. And here's what we're told about him. We're told that he came years ago and never left. Right? He doesn't want to leave. Nate can't or won't open the door to kick him out of the mansion. And now Nate can't figure out who's the one who's really in charge. Is it himself being Nate, or is it himself being fear? Right? So now let's look at the next song that's going to explain what the conflict is between Nate and fear. What's the issue? What's the problem? What is fear doing to Nate that's an issue? So here's Paralyzed. When did I become so numb? When did I lose myself? All the words that leave my tongue feel like they came from someone else. I'm paralyzed. Where are my feelings? I no longer feel things I know I should. I'm paralyzed. Where is the real me? I'm lost and it kills me inside. I'm paralyzed. I'm scared to live, but I'm scared to die. And if life is pain, then I buried mine a long time ago. But it's still alive. And it's taking over me. Where am I? I want to feel something. I'm numb inside. But I feel nothing. I wonder why. I'm on the race of life and time passes by. Look, I sit back and I watch it. Hands in my pocket. Waves come crashing over me, but I just watch them. I just watch them. I'm underwater, but I feel like I'm on top of it. I'm at the bottom, and I don't know what the problem is. I'm in a box, but I'm the one who locked me in, suffocating, and I'm out. I'm running out of oxygen. So fear, the conflict here is that fear has isolated Nate so much so that he's becoming numb, right? He can't escape fear, but he understands that fear is the one that's killing him from the inside. And if it's killing you from the inside, eventually it's going to start killing you on the outside, okay? So Nate understands that I have to escape. So there's your conflict. There's the whole setup. But let's ask the question, why fear? Why is fear the antagonist? What makes him what makes him the antagonist? I mean, let's look at some of the other problems that filled the mansion that Nate talked about. Okay, he talked about regret. He talked about complacency. He talked about anger. He talked about physical abuse. Why were none of those the antagonist of this story? I mean, they're certainly good candidates. And also, something to consider, there's a healthy type of fear, right? There's a type of fear that keeps you from doing something stupid. There's the type of fear that allows you to see the train coming down the track and you knowing you need to get off the train tracks. Okay? There's that type of fear. So why are we choosing fear? Well, I honestly can't tell you why the man, Neff, the actual person, chose fear for his story. Through his music, but I can tell you why fear is certainly a formidable adversary and a well-deserved choice for the antagonist of this story. So Jordan Peterson, who is a clinical psychologist and a doctor, gave a lecture at FUS. That's Franciscan University of Steubenville, a university I'm sure every one of us definitely knew. Okay. But I think this lecture at FUS is going to answer why fear is such a good antagonist for the story. So in his lecture, he uses the Exodus story in the Old Testament. This is where God calls Moses and Abraham to lead the Israelites out of Egyptian captivity. Right? Pharaoh lets them leave after being plagued. After God plagues the Egyptians 10 times. For each time that Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites go, right? God didn't just do this willy-nilly. Moses asked Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. Pharaoh said no, so God punished the Egyptians. So after the Israelites escape the Egyptians by God parting the Red Sea, Uh, Immediately after getting out of captivity, the Israelites find themselves in the wilderness. Okay, they find themselves in a barren wasteland. Now, being that this is, northern Africa-ish, Middle East region, most of the wilderness is basically a barren desert, right? So it's hot. They don't have any food. They don't have any water just readily available, right? They're on the run. They're fugitives at this point. Okay? So what do? They complain. They lose faith. They question not only Moses and Aaron's leadership, but they also lose faith in God, right? Saying that it would have been better for them to stay in Egyptian captivity than to die in the wilderness, right? So that's Exodus 14, and for the entire journey through the wilderness, all they do is complain and lose faith in God over and over and over again. Even after God proves, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to provide for you, they still complain, they still lose faith. Eventually, God punishes them by sending snakes to bite them, getting sick and tired of their complaining. Because if anybody is allowed to get sick and tired, it is the most all-powerful, all-perfect, all-good being. So, Jordan says this in his lecture. What if you go from tyranny to desert? And who wants to do that? And the answer is no one with any sense. And it's like, hey, I'll just keep the tyranny, thank you very much. At least I know where everything belongs there. And fair enough. This is a serious question. It's an open question in the Exodus narrative, whether the desert is worse or better than tyranny. You see, fear likes to use the unknowable future as a weapon against us to keep us paralyzed, right? And Nate says as much back in the song Mansion. So let's look back at that line. Now I'm in a position. It's either sit here and let him win, or put him back outside where he came from. But I never can, because in order to do that, I'd have to open the doors. Now, what happens when you open the doors, Nate? And I think Nate back in 2015 would have said, "Hey, good question." And fear would have said the exact same thing, and that's the point, right? Fear's answer is to paralyze you. Fear's answer is to keep you in the suck and let you rot away, because, and this is the kicker, because it could always get worse if you try something else. That's fear's answer. So Jordan goes on, but you think, well, even if you're in the desert after a tyranny and you lose faith, then the snakes are going to bite you, right? Because that's what happens. Because if you're in a little analog of hell, that being the desert, if you're in a little analog of hell and you lose your faith, is that going to make it better or worse? And your answer is, I have a reason to lose my faith. And well, fair enough, but that isn't the question. The question is, what happens if you lose it, or you start looking for faith in the wrong direction? And the answer is, hell gets a little deeper. And I just want to add this bar that he drops a little later in the lecture. So he says, I spent a lot of time studying atrocities, and one thing I realized on a metaphorical level is the reason hell is a bottomless pit is because no matter how bad it is, there's always some bloody stupid thing you can do to make it worse. And that's a terrifying realization. Amen and amen. So why is fear the antagonist? Because this type of fear, right, not the healthy type, right, that's gonna tell you not to do the stupid thing. This type of fear isn't gonna fix Nate's problems. All this type of fear is doing is multiplying his existing problems into even worse problems, right? His anger, multiplying it into even worse anger. Regret, it gets even worse, right? The complacency gets even worse. Whatever effects from his traumas of physical abuse gets even worse. That's what fear is doing. That's why it's such an effective antagonist. So let's look at the conflict now, okay? If you haven't, so before we go any further, if you haven't already, hit the like button, please. Subscribe. That would really help us out. If you find this content valuable, subscribe. Help it grow. So let's continue to the conflict. So what does Nate do? Right? Is he just screwed? No, I don't think so. At least not yet. Right? If you stay stuck in the rut, then yeah, eventually you're gonna get screwed. All right. So let's jump to his album called Therapy Session and see how Nate tries to fight back against the fear. Okay. So the first way we're gonna look at the song Therapy Session. The first way he does this is by actually showing us, revealing what the stakes are that he's playing for with fear. Okay. What are the stakes to this fight? What are the stakes if I lose? What consequences happen? So here we go. This is a therapy session. Yeah, I got off the stage like a month ago. I was talking to fans, and one of them pulled me aside and said, "We've never met, but I swear that you know who I am. I've been through a lot. I don't know how to express it to people. Don't think that I can. But I got that Mansion CD on rotation. That's real for me, man. That's real for me, Nate. You do not understand." So at this point, right, therapy session, now Nate has a dedicated fan base that has connected to his work. Okay? And I was, at this time, right, 2015, or 2016 actually, I was one of these fans that deeply connected to his work. But this kind of responsibility, the responsibility of having people who admire you, people who look up to you, people who are listening to your every word, looking for advice, that kind of responsibility comes with a lot of pressure. Okay? And I don't know if a lot of artists understand that sort of admiration pressure from fans. But here's how Nate puts it himself about dealing with that pressure. These kids, they come to my shows with tears in their eyes. Imagine someone looking at you and saying your music's the reason that they are alive. Sometimes I don't know how to handle it. This type of life isn't glamorous. This ain't an act for the cameras. You see me walk on these stages, but have no idea what I'm dealing with after it. I put it all in the open. This is the way that I cope with all my emotion. I'm taking pictures with thousands of people, but honestly, I feel like nobody knows me. I'm trying to deal with depression. I'm trying to deal with the pressure. How you gonna tell me my music does not have a message when I'm the one looking out at this crowd of people I know I've affected? So here's Nate's strategy, right, to dealing with his emotions. It's by putting it all out there, putting his pain, putting his heart, wearing his heart on his sleeves, and letting all of us, his audience, see his pain. Okay? Doing this helps Nate to stop being paralyzed by fear. This is how he's able to start moving, right? To stop being in one spot, to stop being numb, right? If I share my pain with people, then I feel it, then I'm not being numb to my emotions anymore. Now I get to kind of deal with some of these things that I should have addressed a long time ago. And by doing this, he's also connecting with the very same people he wanted to connect with in Just Being Me, back in the NF EP, his first EP, right? Or one of his EPs. The people that are just like him, that are stuck. And Nate puts this strategy to the test in a very real way when he writes his most emotional and raw song called "How Could You Leave Us." So if you remember back to what we were learning about our protagonist, we talked about how he lost his mother to pills, right? So I want to share only one portion of the song because I do think that you should just listen to the song to get the best idea of just the kind of emotion NF's putting into this song. So here's the portion of the song that I think is going to at least best encapsulate what I'm talking about. So here we go. Crying my eyes out in the studio is difficult. Music is the only place that I can go to speak to you. It took everything inside of me not to scream at your funeral. Sitting in my chair, that person talking was pitiful. I wish you were here, Mama, but every time I picture you, all I feel is pain. I hate the way I remember you. So, when I was younger, I had to go through some counseling, okay? And I highly recommend it if it's something you need. You should get it. The best encouragement that I ever heard to go get counseling was so it was put like this. It's weird that we'll pay all kinds of money to get our cars tuned up, but we can't fathom the idea of needing to work on your mind when it's falling apart. So, so for me, my parents got divorced when I was around 8 or 9, and at some point I needed help to work through it. I needed help to deal with the effects of that divorce, right? And my counselor at the time uh, saw in me that I was hanging on to some kind of emotion from that divorce. It was an emotion that I was hanging on to and ignoring, and I needed to acknowledge it. I needed to bring it out in the open, bring it out in the light, right? The darkness gets destroyed by the light. So I needed to bring this out into the light. And for me, what that emotion was me being angry that my parents got divorced. And for Nate, the thing he needs to say that's not being said, the thing he needed to say, the thing he needed to bring out in the light was how bitter he was at his mom. Let's look at the last 2 lines again, right? I wish you were here, Mama, but every time I picture you, all I feel is pain. I hate the way I remember you. This song is filled with a man who's bitter, a man who's broken, who's mourning the loss of his mom, but who's also bitter at the way she left. See, we were never made to lock this kind of stuff inside of us. James 5 talks about us needing to confess our sins to one another, and Galatians 6 talks about us needing to bear each other's burdens. We weren't made to do this life alone. Even if you're not a Christian, right? You still need a support group around you. You still need people to pick you up when you drop to the floor. Life's just too difficult and too hard to do by yourself. When we isolate ourselves, it's then that we end up driving ourselves off cliffs. So now Nate, at this point, after How Could You Leave Us, right? After therapy session, at this point, he's starting to deal with all those problems. He's starting to do the right thing, starting to build momentum in the right direction. So now let's look at the last song on the album, where we get to see Nate and Fear have their first conversation on a song together. And it's really fitting that the album cover for the therapy session album is Nate in a white shirt on the left, sitting in a chair, facing Fear, who's in a black hoodie, black cap, slouched in his chair like he doesn't want to be there. I think it's a very fitting album cover. So here's Fear's first line in the song "Lost in the Moment." You got a problem with following through. That's why I got a problem with following you. You keep looking at me like this problem is new, but we've been here before. What you trying to do? Don't talk to me like I don't know what you're feeling, because I was there with you back in the beginning. Quit looking away when I talk. Let me finish. I'm trying to be honest. You're trying to forget me. So here's Nate's response. Joy. When was the last time we had it? I don't remember, because all that we do is go backwards. But that's what you get when you live in the past. And I know we're breathing, but we're not alive. Really, is this the way we want to die? So you got everything bottled inside. If they only knew what goes on in our minds. I know what you're thinking. Don't try to hide. Why do you look at me like you're surprised? If you really mean what you write in these lines, then why don't you fix it? Because I'm getting tired. At this point, this is the song where the battle lines are drawn. This is the song where each side knows exactly where they stand. Nate can't live with fear anymore. Nate recognizes that. I can't be around fear anymore. Right? Fear's just dragging me down like an anchor. And Fear is tired of all of Nate's hand-wringing, all of Nate's second-guessing, all of Nate's pouting and whining, all of it. Fear is sick of it. And what we get after this is the first big fight between Nate and Fear. So on Nate's or NF's third album, Perceptions, we get his first song, Intro 3. Okay? This is the big title match card. This is round 1 of Fear versus Nate. And Fear talks for most of this song. It's right at the end where Nate really steps in. So we're gonna see Fear here. This is Fear talking. What, are you scared of me? That's embarrassing. If it wasn't for me, you would have never wrote Therapy. Talking about therapy session. I've been here for you, but how come you're never there for me? It's a little bit twisted, but I miss when you and I had scary dreams. And then in the background, you hear Nate say, I don't really want to talk about it. And then here comes Fear off the top rope. Well, that's too bad now, Nate. Shut up. Now, where were we? Way back in the day, when you and I had it all mapped out in the basement, crying in your room like a baby, and Fear does this. Fear does the crying in a room like a baby. I wish Mom was here. You can't baby talk someone in the middle of an argument. That's just asking for some problems. So let's continue. Crying in your room like a baby. I wish Mom was here. Right? And he goes, we all do. So we wouldn't have to hear about it. Every single record, you don't really want to change me. Yeah, I'm the reason that made this happen. Do you really want to get rid of your main attraction? So, I mean, Fear is just big boy in NF. Right? I think there's something that needs to be said about Fear. Okay? When you decide to fight Fear, you'd better be ready for Fear to punch back. Okay? Or whatever vice it may be, right? Drinking, drugs, whatever it is. If you're trying to rid yourself of a vice, that vice isn't just going to let you go willingly. It's going to go kicking and screaming, right? And in this particular fight, Fear is coming out the gate like a bat out of you know where. So let's continue. Took us from a no-name, told you everything was okay. Now you're trying to cut me out of it like I ain't never been a part of it. I am the heart of it. I made this whole thing. I put us on a dope stage. You must have no brain. And later he says, you can't get rid of all of me. I'm the reason why. And finally, Nate, here comes Nate to defend himself. I'm the reason why. Here's Nate. Nah, shut up. I don't want to hear another sentence. But Fear doesn't care, right? It's Fear's just stunting like he always is. Doing the baby. Hey, I'm NF. Is it me or the Fear talking? Huh! What a dumb question. Yeah, it's real music to the day we die, right? Yeah, ain't that the slogan, Nathan? Here comes back Nate. Thought I told you to keep your mouth shut. And Fear responds with, I mean, so what? You know I never listen. I mean, look, this is just Fear doing a Dwayne The Rock Johnson on some poor jabroni in the 90s. Okay, Fear does not give two rips about Nate or his feelings or anything about Nate. Okay? So, but the setup for the end is where Nate turns the tables. In the song, Nate asks Fear where the shovel is. And then Fear asks if Fear asks Nate if Nate's digging Fear's grave. And Nate says no. Right? And the last lines of this song are gold. You had me scared this is Fear saying, you had me scared for a second. I thought we were digging my grave. And in the song you hear a clank. Just a big old clank. It's the shovel hitting the back of somebody's head. You had me scared for a second. I thought we were digging my grave. Clank. We did. What, you don't like being afraid? Here's a dose of your own medicine. What, you don't like how it tastes? My therapist told me don't bury my issues, but I'm gonna be honest, man, I'm feeling great. I feel like Nate NF would be great in the WWE. Because that was a great response line. My therapist told me don't bury my issues because I'm gonna be honest, man, I'm feeling great. Nate wins round 1 with Fear. And the cool thing about Perceptions album, the album that Intro 3 intros, the cool thing about that album is for the rest of the album, you hear a much more comfortable, much more confident, much freer, Nate than any of his previous albums. You can especially see this on songs like Outcast, No, Outro. This is a whole new Nate. This is a Nate where the chains are lifted off of him, at least briefly. And there's some of these songs where you can tell that Nate doesn't really know how to deal with this freedom yet. Doesn't really know how to be comfortable in freedom. But it's still a wonderful thing to see. It's a beautiful thing to see what he gets a first taste of what life without fear is like. But often, like parasites, stuff like fear, vices, they just don't know how to stop. And in the final song we're going to look at today, the song's called Why. It's off the 4th album called The Search. Fear makes a comeback, makes his big unfortunate return, like the Terminator or something. And this, in starting with The Search, I think really is where the music videos start becoming so important, right? Because now there's a visual element to Fear. In Why, Fear is dressed in literally all black now. He's got the black cap again. He's got the black sweater, black jeans. He's got a black Joker paint smile on him. Okay, he's got black balloons that represent all of Nate's burdens that he carries around in a shopping cart, almost as like a sick joke that here's your prison you just get to carry now with all your burdens. What I love about Why, and you can see this even in the flow, right, of the song, in the flow of some of how NF raps. Parts of the song sound like someone is being forced to say something they don't actually believe, right? And in the song, you get to kind of see glimpses of Fear again popping his ugly head out. So let's look at some of these lines, right? And notice, at least in these first three, how Fear pokes his head out. So here we go. Stop asking me questions. I just want to feel alive until I die. This isn't Nate's flow. Just let me rhyme. I'm in disguise. Who's in disguise? Right? He says this isn't Nate's flow. Who's in disguise? Just let me rhyme. It's Fear. Fear's back. And he's in control for this song. And he's saying lies again. Here's 2 more lines. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Lies. In the background when he says that, you just hear a ha ha. Ha ha. The song's pretty ominous, actually. Like it's pretty scary. I don't need nobody to help me. Lies. The person saying the word lies is Nate, right? Fear's taking control, so Nate now has to be the guy that has to come in the background and say, no, that's not true. I do care what people think. I do need people to help me, right? So though he's much less pronounced than before, right? He's much less pronounced than in Mansions, much less pronounced than in Lost in the Moment, much less pronounced than in Intro 3. Nate has to deal with this problem again. Nate, and on like all of us at points in our life when we beat a vice, right? We win. It's gone for a time. We get to live peacefully. We get to live freely for a little bit. And then we slip up. And here comes the vice coming back again. And we got to ride that merry-go-round all over again. One more time. But this time for Nate, I believe, is different. This time for Nate, I think the outcome and the motivations of why he needs to beat Fear are going to change. But for that half of the story, we're going to have to wait till Friday. Okay, on Friday we're going to cover the resolution of this, what I believe is a beautiful story. What I believe is a beautiful comeback over Fear. So let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Am I reaching with any of this with story? I don't think I am. I think this is a fair reading of these songs. Does this story resonate with you? Does an NF story resonate with? Does the songs resonate with you? Let me know in the comments. All right, if you've stuck around for the end of this video, thank you. I appreciate it. Episode 2. It's crazy that I got to in. I greatly appreciate you sticking around. Look, I hope this was valuable for you. If you support the content, do please hit the like button, subscribe, help this channel grow. The next episode is going to be out Friday. Hit the notify bell so you won't miss it. If you would like to share a moment, I still would love to do this. If you would like to share a moment in your life where you've been grateful for something that happened, if you would like me to share it on the channel, send an email to talkgratitude@gmail.com, and I will share that story on the channel. I want us to be able to share grateful moments with each other. Or you can type share in all caps next to your story in the comments section, and I'll know that you want that shared on the channel. There's also a Instagram account for the channel if you would like to follow it. It's Let's Talk Gratitude _pod. Go ahead and give that a follow if you would like to. So on that Instagram account, though, there's the posts on there aren't going to have any video descriptions. They're just going to be the descriptions, captions are just going to be dad jokes, okay, that are either going to make you roll your eyes or hopefully make you chuckle. Maybe both. That'd be awesome. But that just makes it more fun for me. But yeah. So anyway, thank you again. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you Friday.